Hey guys, welcome to the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. As you know, this season we are filling in the blank for help. I'm a mom who. And so my guest today is Debbie Ashley, and she is here to share her story. Debbie, if I said, help, I'm a mom who, how would you fill in that blank?
Well, actually, the first thing that comes to mind would be I am a mom that has a son with type 1 diabetes
Mhm.
and how that has changed our lives.
Yeah. What age was your son diagnosed with type 1 diabetes?
He was actually 13 years old, which is a little bit unusual for type
Mhm.
1 diabetes because usually it is diagnosed younger. And so we were completely caught off guard, but he was 13 when he was diagnosed, and that was quite a change in his life and ours as well.
So that's interesting to me that you're saying that typically it's a diagnosis that happens younger. Can
Mhm.
I know you've probably done all the research at this point about type 1 diabetes in children. Could you
Sure.
give us a little more context to that? Like, I really, when you said younger, I was about to respond and say, gosh, that's so young. So can you tell me
Mhm.
more about like what were the symptoms? What were the things that you were seeing that led to this diagnosis? And I'm shocked to hear that it normally shows itself much earlier.
Sure. I felt the same way you did. I was oblivious to some of the dynamics of type 1 diabetes. There's two factors. One is that type 1 diabetes is typically genetic in the sense that probably someone else in your family has had it or has it, and it can be passed on. And so we have nobody in our family history that we know of that has type 1 diabetes. That was the first learning curve for us. And that was actually the first question the doctor asked us was, who in your family has it? And I said, nobody. And she said, oh no, somebody in your family has it. And I said, I don't know of anybody. The fact that it's typically genetic is also why it typically shows up when children are younger, because for whatever reason, there are factors that trigger it. Type 1 diabetes is kind of like a switch in your body. And at some point, that switch is going to turn on. You don't know when that's going to be. But typically, when children are younger, that switch flips and they get type 1 diabetes earlier. So that was all news to me. But there's other research now that would indicate that it's not just genetic. There are some other factors that are coming into
Mhm.
play. And that's probably the area that my son fits into. It's kind of a small window that's a little different. And we really believe that's probably why his experience with diabetes happened the way it did.
Interesting. Very interesting. How has that impacted you
Mm,
as a mom for your son to have this diagnosis? One of the things that you said in the questions before we chatted was it's a silent illness. It's you don't
yes.
look at a child and know that child is struggling with the diabetes or other hidden illnesses that are out there. So how has it impacted you as a mom having a son who has such diagnosis?
Sure. Initially, it obviously impacted us very much as a family personally because type 1 diabetes is, there's no cure for it. And there's the only thing you can do is manage it. And one of the ways you manage it is with diet. And so as a mom, quite honestly, I became afraid of what to feed him, of what to
Mhm.
cook. We kind of had this, unfortunately, rather unhealthy, dietary choices. And everything he ate affected him.
Mhm.
Everything, absolutely everything. So that was a huge shift for me as the mom, as the cook.
Yeah.
The other thing that really was new for me was dealing with a chronic illness. I have three children, and so there's the typical strep throat, or the thing that you take an antibiotic for 7 days and it goes
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And this is the rest of your life. And it's
Mhm.
every day, the rest of your life. And that was overwhelming for him. It was overwhelming for me as a mom because to be honest, it made me want to be angry with God
Mhm.
because when he first became ill, it happened rather quickly. And I thought he just had an infection or just one of those chronic 7-day things that people go through. And when I realized that he had something that he'll have the rest of his life, um, I had to really work through that as a mom and my relationship with the Lord and my faith in who he was and what his plans were for my son.
Yeah.
And so that was partly how it affected me. But the
Mhm.
other thing that it did, and this is a wonderful thing, it gave me an understanding of moms who do deal with chronic diseases in their
Mhm.
children. Honestly, I was oblivious. I had
Mhm.
no idea what it was like for my son's not physically handicapped, so when I feel like the Lord used this to create in me a new compassion and a new understanding of moms, particularly that go
Mhm.
through caring for a child that has a chronic illness.
Yeah.
It's kind of maybe a little bit of a random circle there, but that's really what the Lord has
Mhm.
brought into my life because of this.
Yeah. Well, it's put a whole new level of responsibility on you as well
Mhm.
as mom,
Yes.
managing medications, managing the diet, managing, all of the things. And so during that time, you said that, it made you feel a little angry with God. What in the world? How did you navigate those emotions? Like the anger, and then I would assume there was probably some fear as well. Like,
Mm.
what if he goes to school
Yes.
and something happens and I'm not there? How did you,
Mhm.
let's start there. How did you
Okay.
navigate the letting go of him when now there's
Sure.
a much greater factor involved when you send him off to school, when you send him to spend the night at a
Yes.
friend's, sports, whatever it may be that he's involved in?
Right.
How did you navigate that fear?
That's a great question because that was a huge thing for me. He
Mhm.
was 13, so he was already in youth group and junior high. And I remember one of the very first events coming up after he was diagnosed was an overnight camp out with the youth group about an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, no, you're not going, buddy. You're not
Mhm.
going. You don't know enough about this disease, and I don't know enough about this disease, and I don't know if anybody else there knows anything about this disease.
Mm.
No. And of course, that didn't go over well.
Right.
And he, the other difficulty was he didn't want anybody else to know at that point. He wanted to
Mhm.
keep it a secret because he was afraid. He was afraid of what it would mean. And so I had to pray about that. And I'm like, Lord, okay, it's one thing to have this happen. It's another thing to send him away on a camp out in the woods of Pennsylvania. And
Mm.
the verse that comes to my mind even now is God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind.
Mm.
And, I just had to, it didn't erase the emotion of the fear. I was afraid, humanly speaking, I was afraid the whole time he was gone, but he
Mhm.
did go on the camp out. One of the youth leaders, and I kind of knew this, but one of the youth leaders was a nurse. And God was saying to me, are you going to trust him with me or not?
Good.
And so it was like, okay, Lord, I need to let him go. And you can give me that power and that love and that sound mind. So that was the first of many
Yeah, I'm sure.
things that my son, we continue to let him participate and be active. And the Lord took care of him every single time.
Mm.
That was a huge, huge part of my growth spiritually as a mom.
I'm sure. What has been an unexpected lesson
Mhm.
in this journey?
Oh, an unexpected lesson. I think probably it's a little embarrassing probably to say this one, but I think the one that comes to my mind the most is I did not realize how much of a control freak I was, and I say that not to be, I just say that because it's true,
Hey, if it makes you feel any better, I think all moms have a, a little control freak in us. It's
okay, all
just,
right.
I think it's hardwired into us as moms to have a little control freak. So you're not alone. You're not alone.
Well, that's a good reminder. I appreciate that because I kind of tended to think of myself as, oh, I'm pretty laid back, and then this new thing came into my life but I learned to trust God in a different way.
Mhm,
I learned to trust him with small things. They felt like big things to me, but when it's a daily struggle of, okay, Lord, I don't even know what to feed him. His numbers are high. He can't have all these foods. What should I do? Appointments, doctor's appointments, prescriptions, all of those things. The Lord just began to teach me to allow him to teach me how to manage that and let him take care of it. I
mhm,
I didn't have to be, the ultimate take care of everything person. God didn't want that. And so learning to let God have control of not just the big things, but even the little things was
mhm.
was a huge lesson for me.
Sure. And it's a lesson that we all need to learn, and we certainly don't want to learn it through a child having a chronic illness. But I think when we're faced with these difficult times, whether it be a chronic illness, a season of whatever it may be with a child, I really feel like the only way we can live in those seasons of difficulty and still have hope is to look at where is God showing up
Mm,
in the small
absolutely.
things. What are the lessons that we're
Yeah.
learning? It may not feel good, right? But
Right.
there's got to be a lesson in this, and how do we hone in on that? Because I think in the lesson is where we also see the hope, and in the answered prayers. When you were struggling, like, oh gosh, these are the numbers, and what do I feed him? And then it worked out, and you laid your head on the bed at night. I bet you were like,
Right.
okay, I did it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Today we got
Right.
through another day. And then you're able to
Right.
look at the Lord and go, I did it because you held my hand through this whole process. And sometimes I think in the middle of it, we forget that because it feels so hard in the middle, right? And in the messy
Yes.
middle, it's always so hard. And so I want to say this, in the middle of this, did you ever feel like I can't do this? Like, God, I can't do this. This is too much. I don't know how to manage this. I'm a control freak. I'm worried about him going away. I'm worried about him doing this and that. Did you ever just have those moments where you cried out to God and you're like, I can't do this?
I did. And actually, there's a very distinct moment that I will never forget. And it was probably about 2 or 3 months after his diagnosis. And I don't remember the particular situation that brought me to this point, but I realized I was angry with God. And I also realized I was trying to control everything. And it was one of those moments that it just kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. And we have a screened-in porch off the back of our house. And I still remember I wanted to talk to the Lord and I didn't want anybody around. So I went in the screened-in porch, closed the door, and I talked out loud to God. And I said, God, I can't do this anymore. And I know that's what you've been trying to tell me is that I
Mm,
can't do this and that I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this by myself. And I literally stood on the porch and I just said, He's yours, Lord. And whatever you want to do with his life,
mm.
I am willing to accept. And it was just a couple minutes. I didn't want my family looking for me,
Yeah.
and but it was a very defining moment for me to really let go of the
Mhm.
control. And when it would creep back in, honestly, sometimes even today, it wants to creep back in. And the first thing I think of is when I stood on that screened-in porch and I said, God, this is yours. And so that was very much a defining point that
Mhm.
shifted it for me. And the Lord, not that I never struggled with that again, but I always I always felt like I had that understanding with the Lord of
Mhm.
how this was going to work.
I think sometimes we get angry with the Lord and we bottle it up and we put ourselves at arm's distance. We're
Mhm.
like, we're mad at you. We don't like this is happening. And so, I'm just going to kind of push you away. Where really what he's saying is, I want you to come to me, and you can come
Yes.
to me in your anger. You can come to
Hmm.
me in your confusion, and I'll meet you there. I'll meet you on the
Yes.
porch. Right.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. Yes.
and so I hope there's a listener that if they have a
Mhm.
child that's struggling with something, and I've been there, I've been in your shoes, different
Mhm.
situation, but I just remember things happening with one of my kiddos and me being so just mad. Like, why
Mm.
him? Why us? Why now? All the whys,
Sure.
and sitting in that anger for way longer than I should have.
Okay.
And versus now I think just over time I've been like, oh, wait a minute. I can be angry and still be very much in a relationship with the Lord. My ridiculous anger doesn't push him away, it pushed me away. And so how do
Sure.
I come to balancing point where I can just be real honest and say, you know what, this doesn't feel good. This makes me angry. This is confusing. This is hard. Why us? But God, I
Right.
know that you're very present. I know that you're my hope. I know that you're my peace. You're my comfort. And will you meet me in my anger? And funny how he always does that, right? He
It's
always
so true.
shows up because he's not like us, right? When we get angry at other people, we're the push away, and he's the come see, come here, let's get a little closer. In this journey of diabetes, can you tell me how have you seen your son grow through this diagnosis, and like how has God worked in his life personally?
That's that has been a great thing to be able to watch. I
Mhm.
think the first aha moment I had like that was my son as he got into college, and then even right after college, he was working with youth. He was a youth
Mm.
pastor, or he worked at a camp for a while. And I remember when he came home one time and he'd had his first camper that had diabetes.
Oh
And
yeah.
and the mom was dropping him off and she was nervous. And Jonathan said, I got this, and he
Mm.
he showed her his pump and his patch. And the mom was like, thank you, Lord. And Jonathan was able to see, at least in a little small glimpse, a purpose to it.
Yeah.
Um, and then actually he's gone on, he's actually was a youth pastor at a church. A similar thing happened. And even now he has the ability to speak into something that a lot of people don't. And it's given him a heart of understanding and compassion. And
Yeah.
as a mom, it doesn't answer all the questions. It doesn't make everything go away. But when
Yeah.
you can see how God took something really hard in his life, but has turned it around to be something that really gives him a ministry in the lives of other people. And that's
Mhm.
been just a real neat thing to watch.
Oh, I'm sure. Because how much comfort would that have given you if, when you had to send him away on that first overnight trip after this diagnosis, if somebody could have looked at you? I mean, God placed a nurse, so I know that gave you
Okay.
some peace, but to have another person there that says, I've got this, I get
Yeah.
it, what comfort he's able to bring to other moms. What a blessing.
Yes, it is. It really is.
And it's a blessing that you share this story as well, because
Mm.
again, I go back to what I said earlier, these chronic illnesses, these hidden illnesses in kids, we could keep them in hiding, right? But when we share about it, it throws open the door for other people to say, wait, I needed somebody that's been in these shoes. And I hope that's what the listener is getting out of this, that this, we're just two moms who have never met. We're meeting over Zoom, but we're chatting about, hey, you know what? Things happen and it is scary
Mm.
as a mom and we want to control it. But when we surrender and we look and realize that God is in control, and look what he's done in your son's life by saying, hey, there's a
Mm.
purpose to this. And we begin to share these stories. That's the whole premise behind this show, is sharing stories so that other moms who are listening can say, oh, I'm not alone. That's the point. You're never alone because, of course, God is always with you and your child. And there's other moms who get it as well. So I love that he's able to be that comfort for a mama who's got a kiddo, maybe a new diagnosis, maybe a younger kid. And he's able to say, you can feel safe with your child being in my presence. So that's wonderful. What is I want you to encourage a mom who's listening right now. Like, you've come through a lot. You said you still sometimes struggle with it, but what does hope look like for you today?
I think hope today for me looks like, um, oh, I've got a couple of things running through my head here. I think hope there's two sides to that coin, if that's a good, okay way to put it. Honestly, I think I still hope for a cure. I think I still hope for an advancement in medicine, some research that would suddenly open the window to a different pathway.
Mhm,
And I know a lot of people would have that hope about a lot of things, whether it's cancer or other
mhm.
things, just for the sake of my son's health, and
Yeah,
his future. So that would be just a very realistic human hope,
sure.
but be much more beyond that, much more. I would hope that any mom who has walked or is walking this kind of a journey would be able to find the comfort that I have found in the Lord, the hope that I found in the Lord. And quite honestly, it took a while, but some peace. I found peace in this, that this is part of a bigger picture. This
Mm,
is part of a bigger picture for my son, but it's part of a bigger picture for me.
mhm,
Because as you said, there's so many that go through this type, whether it's diabetes or another chronic illness. Almost everywhere that I have an opportunity to share my story, without fail, I have somebody come up to me afterwards and say, that was me, or that is me, or
mm.
I'm where you used to be. I'm still struggling. I'm still in the I'm angry stage. And so that's a huge blessing that gives me hope for the future, that God can continue to use this story. God can continue to use what was a very difficult situation. Honestly, my son is 34 years old now. And
Yeah,
so we're talking many years, and God's still using that story to be of encouragement to others.
yeah.
And I love that. So
How has this journey shaped your view of what it means to be a quote unquote good mom?
I would say two things. First of all, I think it changed my perspective of a good mom always knows what's best for her children, or a good mom always knows, what to do, because we can have all the plans and all the things figured out for our kids, and they're good plans, or they're good choices, and yet God could change that in a moment's notice, and we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with our good not
Mhm.
necessarily lining up with God's good for our children.
Mhm. I think a lot of times we compare ourselves to what other moms are doing or how other moms are handling situations. And when each of our situations is unique, and just because, and so it starts setting us up for these feelings of trying to be perfect in a situation, comparing ourselves. And when we tear down some of that, I think then we replace that with grace for ourselves and truth.
Yes, and I think that both of those, grace and truth, are so vital to our personal success spiritually as a mom. There were times I was very hard on myself. I should have done that differently. I should have gotten him to the doctor sooner. I should have not let him go on that event, or whatever those things are. And so I think sometimes as moms, we're hardest on ourselves when it
Yeah.
comes to grace. And and so recognizing that God was being gracious with me as a mom as he walked me through this journey of learning how to accept that grace and be gracious to myself and allow myself to not be the perfect mom, to not always do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And just the truth that God is in it all. You know, he was
Mm-hmm.
in it all. He still is. But
Yeah.
I look back and realize the times that I didn't think that God was there, that God was doing anything. When
Mm-hmm.
I looked back, it became very evident that he was there all along. You
Yeah.
know, the right doctor, the right nurse, the right timing, the right person to talk to. All of those things give incredible hope when you can look back and see how God has been there absolutely every step of the way.
And that's so beautiful to take a moment and reflect on that and say, okay, where was God at this point? Where was God at that point? I think when we do take a minute to really reflect on it and ask him, where were you in that doctor's office? He's going to be kind to remind you, I was right there. I was right there. I was right
Absolutely.
there at that overnight camp when the nurse was there
Mhm.
to calm your fears and to be that watch for your son. I close every show asking if there's something that you're praying for that we could join you in prayer. And do you have a verse that you would like to share with the listeners?
I'm sure. As far as praying needs I'm praying for right now, kind of a similar thread. I have two family members and a friend who are going through some serious health issues, not diabetes, but some serious things. And I'm just coming to the Lord daily on their behalf.
Mm,
And again, some of the things we've talked about, different disease, same truth, same
yeah.
truth, same truth that God is there at every appointment and every new step in a disease or a diagnosis. But that's a prayer burden I have right now. But then my favorite verse is Psalm 16:11. It says, "You have made known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy, and at your right hand there are pleasures forevermore." And there's three parts of that verse, and they each mean something a little different to me. You will show me the path of life. God is right in front of us, leading us. He's there every step of the way. In your presence is fullness of joy. And one thing that I learned, both when my son was diagnosed and since, is that if I'm not spending time in his presence, my joy is going to diminish. And
Mm,
so that time with the Lord in his presence is fullness of joy, and at your right hand are pleasures forevermore. And his right hand it's that close fellowship. When
yeah.
I'm at his right hand, when I am walking with him and I am standing, sitting in his presence, there will be pleasures forevermore, no matter what's going on around us. So
Mhm.
that's a verse that means a lot to me today.
It's a beautiful verse, and I appreciate you sharing that and sharing your story. This is just another opportunity for something that has been difficult and unexpected for God to say it has meaning and it has purpose. And so I appreciate you sharing this with us, and just the faith and the hope that you've had through this whole journey is such an encouragement to myself, and I know to those who are listening. So thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's just been a real joy. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks so much for listening to The Mom Show with Courtney Doyle. Remember to check the show notes for any links, books, or resources that are mentioned in each episode. We want to be sure this blesses other mothers. And in order to do this, if you're listening via podcast, be sure that you like and share. If you could write a review, that would be fantastic. It helps us get in front of other moms. If you're watching via YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. This way, you won't ever miss an episode. We want to make sure that we increase our reach to other mothers who need a little encouragement, a community, and a whole lot of Jesus. We're so glad you're here.